Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced, developer advocate here at Dremio, and here today I want to talk about the concept of slowly changing dimensions. So slowly changing dimensions is a concept in data modeling about capturing sort of changes in data and determining sort of how you're going to approach capturing changes in data. And there are different types of SCDs, so types of approaches to tracking those changes. Now there's SCD type 0, which just means the data never changes to begin with. So if the data never changes to begin with, then you don't really need to track it. Then there's SCD type 1, where the data does change, but you don't need to capture the historical value. So in that case, you just update the record and that's that. But once you go beyond that, you do want to somehow capture historical data. And there's different approaches, particularly SCD2, 3, and 4. SCD6 is technically a hybrid of 2, 3, and 4. And SCD5 isn't canonically defined. So there really isn't an SCD5, but there is an SCD6, kind of a weird world. But let's go over SCDs 2, 3, and 4 and see them in action. So here I got all set up, SCD2. Okay, and I'm going to set up my context here to our demo folder. Good. Okay. And essentially what's happening here is we're going to create a table, okay, of just, customer data. And notice we have two ID fields, okay? So the idea is that there's going to be an ID of the record, and then they'll separately will be an ID of the customer. So we'll have multiple entries with the same customer ID because that customer updates. And the idea here is what we're doing is we're just going to create a separate record every time the customer changes things. And then that one becomes retired. And then the new one becomes sort of the effective or active record. Okay, so in this case, we insert one customer into here. Okay, so again, that would be the first record in the table, but also John Doe is going to have the customer ID of 1. We insert that information. Now currently, John Doe is going to be, again, it's effective as of this date. Okay, that's when this particular version of John Doe became effective, and then it expires on this date, which is far off into the future because, well, it's active and you don't know exactly when it's going to expire. You can deal with that when it does expire. Okay, so there's the initial record. So now we decide that we're going to, we hear that John Doe wants to update their information. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we're going to update the old record. Okay, so here what we're doing is we're going to set the current date. We're going to set the expiration date to basically yesterday, the day before this query is run. We're going to change is current to false, so that way going forward it's treated as inactive. And again, we're targeting specifically where that specific record, the current record, and making sure that, hey, that's the one that is current. Okay, so basically where that customer, so the version of John that is currently active. So both of these have to be true. Whew, mouthful. Okay, so we update that record, and then after we update the record, we can insert the new version of John. Okay, which again, that's going to be the second record in our customers table, but it's still referring to that customer with the ID of 1. Okay, and then again, we set it up with the current date. That's going to be the new effective date. And again, we set off that date in the future to be when it's expired because it's not expired. Okay, and then we'll query so you can see the end result. Okay, so let's run that one. Okay, and it's just a reminder, you can always find all these examples in the link that's in the video description so that way you can kind of see them, read the comments, try them out yourself, okay, on your Dremio Cloud account, which you can go set up for free. If you don't have a Dremio Cloud account, go set one up. It's pretty cool. But yeah, now this query is just about wrapping up. Okay, so again, we created a table. We inserted our initial record. Then we inserted another record. Okay, well, technically this is the update of John Doe. Then we inserted the new John Doe, resulting in this table. So as you can see here, we have two John Does, but only one of them is the current one. So whenever I search for the customer with that ID that is current, it's always going to give me the newest one, and then I can use other types of queries based on date or whatnot to figure out, hey, what is the version of that customer at a particular date and time? Okay, because basically I have the beginning and ending date for any particular previous version of John Doe. Now, SCD3 takes a different approach. So instead of trying to track every version of John Doe, we're like, all we care about is the previous version of that particular column. So in this case, once again, we have product information. Okay, but except now we're going to have two pieces of information in each record, the previous price and the current price. So instead of creating an additional record for every time the product changes, we will just update the actual product itself. The current price will become the old price, and then the new current price becomes the new current price. Pro, you're not creating a bunch of records for the same product. Downside is you're only capturing sort of the previous set of information. So if I want to look what the price was 2 times ago, so like the price before the last price, that information will not be available. Okay. But again, it just depends on sort of what are your data needs. So, okay, how much are you willing to store? How much are you willing to have to maintain to have that granularity data? If you don't need that granularity data, then this is another approach. So let me actually make sure I set the context. Okay, January, and then I'm gonna hit run. Okay, so that's going. Okay, and again, that's some of the point out that some of the niceties of, again, the Dremio UI, the ability to kind of see all these queries, kind of the results kind of laid out in several tabs, to be able to have all these queries set, I have all these scenarios set up in multiple tabs, making it really easy to work in multiple things at the same time, being able to save those scripts as those scripts over here. Very nice. Okay, but let's take a look. Okay, I created the table, we inserted the record, we updated the record, and now when you take a look at it, I can see what the previous price was, $29.99, and the current price is $34.99. So again, very simple solution. So you still get to capture some historical data, and you get to see with the price effective date, you know that, hey, it was $29.99 before that date. But again, you can't go any further back because you're not capturing every single version in that table. The last version, what the last version does is that it's going to separate capturing the historical information into a separate table. So that way, in this case, the product table has only unique products. So in that case, you're not going to have 2 of the same product in the product table, but there'll be a separate product history table that captures basically the changes to those products. So if I want to see what the historical changes to the product are, I'd go to the product history table, because the product data table is always going to have the current version. So that's SCD type 4, where you have a separate history table. So in that case, let me just change the context here. There we go. I'll run it in there. Okay. And again, we have our 2 tables. And the idea is we have our products. Each product gets a record. But then anytime when those products change, we're going to go track the historical version of it in the historical table. And then we'll update. And then again, we just update that record in the original table. So the original table always just has the newest information. And then any older versions will be in that historical table. I'll query both of them at the end so you can kind of see them both side to side. And yeah, let's do it. So I'm going to hit run. Okay. And then that's going to begin running. And again, just to kind of point out some of the other cool things is, as you see here, I'm using a 2XS engine. So in Dremio, you can set up all sorts of different engines of different sizes depending on the kind of performance and type of queries you plan on running. And you can actually have them auto scale, auto turn on, auto turn off. So that way your infrastructure bill is always only what you need, only what you used. Okay, no dangling instances or anything like that. Okay, so here we go. Again, we added the 2 tables. We inserted the records. Okay, then we went and updated the old record. So then when I take a look at the table of changes, this is what I see. This is the table of changes. I see that, hey, there was a time when gadget was $29.99, and that changed, and that date changed on 2024, January 1st, 2024, or January 3rd, 2024. Okay, but if I take a look at the current table for gadget, I just see the current price of $34.99. Okay, so then if I were to change that again, then this $34.99 price would be put into the historical table, and this would be changed to whatever. Again, that's SCD type 4. So you have SCD 2, 3, and 4 that really kind of capture some level of historical data in different ways. When you get to like SCD type 6, you're oftentimes combining the 2. So you might have like the previous and current value in each record, but then you still might have multiple rows for that same users. So that way, if I have the current John Doe record, I can always get at least the previous address, and then I can query the other John Doe records if I want to go further behind that. So you kind of capture both. There's different ways you can do this. But hopefully this gives you a better idea of just sort of how this looks like in practice. My name is Alex Merced, developer advocate here at Dremio. I'll see you all soon.